Joining us today on the conversation, we have, well, you can see he's a film collective behind him, but we have the host of Disconnected, my man Ryan. What's going on?
How we doing? I'm still tired. I had a long live show last night, and I'm wrecked.
Yeah. Tell us about the live show.
Every Thursday night, I go over all of the boutique announcements for the week, and lately it's been ramping up. Obviously, fall is big for a lot of these companies, and gosh, there was just a few weeks ago, it was almost a 4 hour show. Literally, most of that was just the announcements. But last night was extra special because it was the launch of the Vinegar Syndrome Flash pre-order weekend. So we just said, screw it, we'll just stay live, and went through the announcements. Then we went over 10 of our favorite horror steel books, and then we
Nice.
launched right into Vinegar Syndrome and stayed live while everybody checked out the new titles and reacted to them. And yeah, every single Thursday night.
Yeah. Did you make a order live while you were doing that?
I did not. I'm a subscriber, so I'm getting most of the announced stuff anyways. The only one that I'm not is that new VSU, which is Roadhouse on 4K, the Swayze joint, and I'll probably get it.
Yeah. I like that movie.
Yeah, and to get it on 4K, I mean that's a treat.
Yeah. It can't be fun. Can't be.
Exactly.
The way we do this is we start off with normally with a non-movie question, and then we get into the good stuff. But we're going to do it a little different today. For you, I'm not even going to start with a question. I'm going to start with a comment. So my comment is, shout out to your sister Courtney for taking all my best questions when she did the interview with you. Convey a message for her. Please tell her I love her Dreamer shirt that she was wearing, the tarot card shirt. And even more, I love her Freddy Krueger tattoo, the stencil that says follow your dreams. So I'll put the link to the interview in the description, but that was great. She covered stuff that I would have covered.
My sister's a saint, and she visited here in August, and we've talked a lot about content creation over the years and how we both tried to dabble in it, and we both came from the same house but with wildly different experiences, and it has been wonderful connecting as adults and reflecting on how things have grown us as people and affected us long term. And she used to be a co-host of a podcast called That's Totally Normal, right? And it was her and another person basically just understanding trauma and speaking with people to share that shared experiences and unique experiences shape us all differently. And the way that she was able to visit and ask some of those questions, it was just a really great time. She's an incredible person.
Yeah, and I've kind of gleamed that. I started to follow her on Instagram at the risk of being creepy. So if you see comments from an account that says KB loves movies, it's this guy. I do have a question. I came up with one because when I first watched your videos, and I have to admit it wasn't that long ago that we initially met through our mutual friend Nathan Jones, and I started checking out the channel, hopped on a couple of the Thursday night streams. The first thing I saw, and I thought it was a chair initially, were your volume levels behind you. And I'm like, that is so cool. I'm an audio guy. I'm a music guy. So just seeing the VU meters going off, I was like, who, how, why would he do that? And how cool is that?
Yeah, it's I thought it was a pretty interesting touch, and it's had some odd effects on personal life too. Like I've got there's a couple that you can't see in the frame behind me that they're on all of the shelf posts for the shelves that I built. And I've got two kids with special needs, and so being able for them to have time with me in this room where we just hang out and talk about movies, and they will stand in a corner and just make noises and watch it bounce back to them, and seeing their face light up and recognizing the colors and all that it's fantastic. I love having them in here.
That's awesome. So it's voice activated. It's not through a microphone or anything like that.
Nope, it's a super cheap Amazon Light.
I love it. I love it. Um, the thing that I like about your channel and just how you've grown in the community is that you have an opportunity to interview a lot of people, and the situations and the questions you're asked are very unique. It's not like the how large is your connection or your
Right.
collection or whatever. So from one interviewer to another, what has been one of your favorite interviews that you've done?
Oh boy. Probably one of my most recent ones, and that would be Kat Ellinger, who is a contributor to a bunch of these Blu-rays behind me. She has been involved for years in this hobby and industry, and the thing that really brought on the interview is she recently wrote and directed and produced and edited and basically did everything for a documentary in the UK on Jean Rollin, the horror. Well, he's known basically as a horror director, but he's done all kinds of stuff from adult films to weird, like psychotropic, surreal films in France. And she sent me a screener of the documentary so I could see it because it's not available anywhere yet, so we could talk about that. And the best thing is the interview was good. I'm not going to take away from the interview, but afterwards, we just talked for like 20 minutes, and she really had to go. She wasn't supposed to stay on that long, but she made a couple comments, and we had a lot more things in common than we expected. And to have somebody willing to be that personal and able to relate in ways that I did not see, it was kind of mind blowing, and it was something that I will cherish for a long time. And we continue to talk, and I'm hoping to have her back on soon, or maybe do something else with her. Actually,
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
really awesome. I see that you had an opportunity to meet with someone from Reddit, did like almost like an AMA kind of thing. Am I correct in that?
Oh, was that when I did They Live by Film?
Yeah. Yeah.
The podcast, yeah.
So that's what it was. It was a podcast that you did, and
yeah.
Okay.
There was and actually last night on my live show, one of the guys from the podcast was on my live show, and the guy that interviewed me for that podcast, he's going to be on the live show in just a couple of weeks. I'm real close with those guys, and the funny thing is they do very similar things. They get people from some of these boutique labels and try to interview them for the podcast quite often. So it's difference between a video and audio medium, and yeah, very shared kinship there.
Yeah. Just going through it quickly, a couple of things caught my eye, and I just need you to repeat something that you mentioned there. Can you tell me how Beauty and the Beast reminds you of a woman in labor?
So if my memory is correct, which it may not be, I have to admit, but I believe Beauty and the Beast was the first film I ever saw in theaters. The timeline is right on that front, but I believe that came out, and as we were getting out of the car, I was so excited to finally go to a theater that I raced my stepmother to the front door, and the running of from the car to the door supposedly did something, and it made my stepmom go into early labor, like very early labor, like 5.5 months, and she was forced to be on bed rest to stop that. And she literally slept in the living room for months, and she was pregnant with Courtney. So that's
wow.
Yeah. Bring it all back around. Yeah.
So are there any triggers when you mention it, or if you watch it with your kids or anything like that?
Not at all. I love the film. It's still one of my favorites. I think it's one of the best Disney soundtracks of all time, and it's all happy memories because of the relationship with my sister now.
That's awesome. One of the things, and I know you're very focused on this, especially with boutique labels, they're focused on this. I always say, if you're in the community and you don't like horror, you don't really have a large collection as compared to what could possibly be. But what is it about the horror genre that's appealing to you personally?
It's a great question. There's a few things that I always kind of grab onto. One is practical effects, and I think that throughout horror, that is some of the best examples of practical effects of all time. Literally, there is nothing about action movies in particular that make me go, yeah, practical effects and action is incredible. But with horror, I think of like 1985 and the amount of amazing things that were done around then is astonishing. And the filmmakers that are still doing it today in the midst of our CGI time that is blooming around us, I have nothing but respect for them. So that's a big thing. Another one is it's hard as somebody that has dealt with depression and a traumatic childhood for years to, I mean, just to be completely blunt here, just to feel things sometimes. And horror is one of those things that can draw genuine emotions out of people. And because it's such a wide range of emotions that you can grab onto, whether that be isolation or feeling like you are cornered or feeling like you are desperate, no matter what it is, there seems to always be something that can make you reach to that different level of feeling. And a lot of those feelings for me, I've found, is empathy. And with other movies, like I'm a sucker for a good romantic comedy. Genuinely, I love them, but it's just to get a chuckle out of me. With horror, there's a lot of times where it's, I've never necessarily felt this myself, but to feel the empathy for these characters, it makes me understand a little bit more about myself as I watch these movies.
Yeah, and the human condition overall sometimes too.
Right.
I recently saw Pearl. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Not yet. I'm dying to.
One of the things that I did enjoy about it, and I even mention it, I do like a out of the theater instant reaction kind of thing, was
watch everyone. Love them.
Oh, thank you. The prosthetics team. They had Weta working with them for prosthetics, and there was one scene toward the end where it's like, wow, you're really butchering that person. And you could tell the care and the detail that they put into it, because it's like they went to a morgue and just grabbed a fresh body and did it there. I mean, not gory necessarily, but detailed. That's the best word I could use. Very detailed. Yes. And especially in the age of CGI, you're not used to seeing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a problem. And it's a problem because it takes me out of the movie. I think that's the worst thing. And most of the time it's done on the cheap, which really takes you out of the movie. And some of these, well, let's be honest, most of the movies we watch that are brand new, they have CGI to some point. But the ones that are done well, it's to maybe liven up the background or something. It's not to put, fake blood coming out of somebody or to de-age people like is suddenly the trend in some of these movies. But with a movie like Pearl or X or the movies that I'm going to talk about as some of my favorites tonight, they're not there to bring about some sort of disbelief and, hey, let's rush through this because it's cheap.
Yeah, I think that's why, to use an older example and a more modern example, movies like The Thing are considered classic because that was all practical effect. Just because of the time, they didn't have that CGI element to work with. But then you take a look at like a more modern film like George Miller and what he did with Mad Max Fury Road, where, okay, we could tell when you're using, color correction or CGI, but it's so minimal and it's so well used that we totally appreciate all the stunt work and all the practical effects that you're doing, because that's where we could tell that's where your focus is.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect example for good CGI, because there is a ton of CGI in Mad Max Fury Road. If you've ever seen the making of stuff behind that film, it is everywhere. And the fact that most of the time you don't even come close to noticing it is a testament to how good and sparingly it's used in that film, even though it's really not sparingly. It's kind of in every scene, but
Yeah.
the focus is on the practical use and the acting and the storytelling. It is just above and beyond what it needed to be.
Yeah. Furiosa is a walking CGI. I mean, she's
Absolutely.
she's played by an actor, but at the same time, her physical appearance is part CGI, which is so well done, as you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
Staying on the horror tip, you have a wide collection and you've seen a lot of movies, especially in the last, would I say, 10 years or so?
Yeah.
If I had to guess. What's an uncommon horror title that not a lot of people know that you think should have a wider audience?
Whew, that's a good question. I'm probably gonna run with Splinter. That is from 2008, and it
Mm-hmm.
is a film about a couple that is driving by. I believe there's a very short nod to like this isolated road they're on. There's like a nuclear facility on this road supposedly, and they are driving a little further, and there's a guy that acts like he's hurt and takes this couple hostage, and makes them drive to a gas station. When they go to this gas station, something is not quite right, and it turns out to be a little mutating creature, basically, that will leech on to any living source, and it is shown in a way that is splinters, basically, and it's really hard to explain until you see it. But it's like this weird, like the old koosh ball type of that type of like spikes in every direction. It will
Yeah.
grab onto a living creature and then make that creature splinter out. But when it does, it is controlling it like a parasite. And so these people that have been attacked by this thing are walking towards another human, trying to get to this other human, and the body starts to move in this unnatural way, and it is super unnerving. And it is, a lot of this one is CGI because it would be literally impossible to do practically, but it's done
Yeah.
in such a nice it's from 2008-ish, I think. So because of
Yeah.
that timing, it's done in that style. The late 2000s had a very specific style, and it's almost like kind of like a crappy music video from around that time where they do a lot of quick cuts, but it serves this medium very well, and it works in such a great way. Yeah, it is a pretty much a one location film, which I always appreciate that it can be done well, but it's just beyond tense and really anxiety inducing. It's a great film.
Yeah. It's got to check that out. By the time this is up and out, it will be the day that we are going to enjoy a lovely movie marathon of all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies plus Freddy versus Jason. So looking forward to that today. You know, to put it in
I'm
context.
so stoked.
I can't remember. For most of them, I saw them on the big screen when they were first premiered because I'm that old. The only one I haven't seen is Freddy versus Jason on the big screen. Out of all of them, which one are you looking most forward to seeing on the big screen?
I mean, to show my difference, but basically all of them. I've seen none of them on the big screen. So
Okay.
I am really eager, most of all, for Dream Warriors. It's such a classic in my mind. But to kind of cheat with an answer here, Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, 3 back to back, because they have such different tones, and Freddy is such a different character, basically. I can't wait just to embrace that on the big screen and watch the evolution of these films in real time, because it was done in such a different way than some of these other franchises. Like Friday the 13th was made to be a cash cow pretty much, and Nightmare on Elm Street really never had this mindset, and it just sort of took off. Freddy became this untouchable icon in the pop culture, and a lot of people nowadays don't realize that he was literally everywhere. Like the fact that Freddy's Nightmares got a TV show, and he was on like cereal boxes and on like primetime TV with late night hosts and stuff like that is astonishing.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to live through that time because I don't know, have you ever seen Never Sleep Again?
Oh yeah, multiple times.
So you go from New Line basically being bankrupt and they're making this movie, and they're risking the lives of the crew and the cast members involved to it doing okay in the movie theaters, but doing so much better on home media, and then spawning this sequel that everybody just wanted to see more Freddy and the slash and gash kind of thing. And we get a totally left of center movie that Scream Queen, a great documentary that I recently watched about Mark Patton and everything he went through with that. That was just totally unexpected. And then just to go back to the third movie and all the subsequent ones, especially the ones that Wes Craven was involved in, with New Nightmare at the end, especially. But it was such a ride because, I mean, Freddy, like you said, was everywhere, but he was also everything. He wasn't Michael Myers. He wasn't Jason. He wasn't Leatherface. It was like he went from being scary and almost realistic, especially when you consider, the origin was Wes Craven read the story where this guy actually died in his sleep because he kept saying, hey, somebody's trying to kill me in my sleep, to making a character that would actually do that. And then almost seeing him become like caricature of himself.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't scary anymore. It was funny in a sense,
The amount of one-liners and catchphrases that he has now is crazy.
Yeah. There's a few I'd like on a t-shirt or two. I hate that they cancel Freddy's Nightmares because that was coming out on Blu-ray. I was so looking forward to that. But
yeah, I'm curious what the reason is.
Yeah, probably licensing. You never know. Yeah. But it's on Tubi if you want to watch it, especially the very first episode because you get the origin story of Freddy. So check that out.
They are worth it, yeah.
Are you ready to do the 5 spooky season takes?
Absolutely.
Number 1, name the horror movie that made you fall in love with the genre.
My common answer for this is Halloween. I saw it when I was 8 years old. My parents suggested it, and I accepted it. And supposedly I was so scared the entire time. They made fun of me because afterwards they said I was stiff like a board, arms down, not even crooked elbows or anything like that, just perfectly straight out. And I had a blast with it, but I feel like I didn't really. I watched some around that time, but it was a rough age. I'm a fairly young person, so after I watched Halloween, it wasn't a brand new film or anything like that. It was like the mid '90s, and following around that time, horror had a little bit of a downturn, I would think. Somewhere after the first Scream came out until probably 2003-ish, I feel like there was a lot of just unnecessary films that came out. They weren't too great. There's probably 5 or 8 favorites that I can point out from that time, but it was just a really poor time for horror, I feel like. And following that, though, there was a handful of movies that really got me back into it, and one of them I'm going to say just because it doesn't get enough attention nowadays, and that is High Tension, the French extreme film. So watching that for the first time, it really brought this new aspect of horror and made me fall in love with how artistic it could be and how much of a different story it could be. And speaking of identity horror, that is certainly one of those.
Yeah, there was something about that time that, to me, I think Scream kind of saved the genre because it was kind of on a downturn, like you said. And then after that, it's almost like everybody wanted to be some type of iteration of it or just quick, poor writing toward the movies. So, it was one or the other. But let's focus on the favorites. So number 2. Name 5 of your favorite horror movies.
I love physical media so much that I wanted to search for all of these, and I do apologize that I can't find my release for the first one. And the hard part is that it does not have a US physical release, I believe. I think it's only in the UK at the moment. It might be in Germany as well. But I had to import this one because it's such a dang good movie, and I'm curious if you've seen it. It is The Skin I Live In with Antonio Banderas.
Yes.
This movie is wild. This is one of those movies that if you if you truly sit down and immerse yourself, don't, do it at night, dark room, don't look at your phone the entire time. As you're watching this, you can truly get lost in the visuals and in the storytelling. It is crafted in such a way that you are just gone with it. And because you are genuinely invested in some of these characters, you are along for this ride. And this is one of those movies where it feels like it could have 4 or 5 different endings. And as you're watching it, I hate to say this, but this is like what this movie is known for. And this movie has 3 or 4 giant twists, and you no matter how much you could think about and prepare for this film, you cannot prepare yourself for the twist in this movie. And to give the gist of what this movie is, it's basically a movie about the horrors of plastic surgery and what a doctor could potentially do. And Antonio Banderas is the doctor. He is the villain, and it is crafted in such a gorgeous, very Spanish way that it is just astonishing filmmaking. It is a journey from the start to the end that it is tense, and I felt myself going, holy crap, what am I watching, multiple times. It is a genuinely terrifying story. It is an appalling story, and supposedly one that was inspired by something that somebody had heard, one of those, this is inspired by real life events, but nothing like the real life story sort of things. And that just makes it so much worse for me. So The Skid I Live In, have you seen it?
Yes, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, when you see the cover of it, it kind of intrigues you because you don't know what you're getting into. It kind of reminds me of Eyes Without a Face when you look at it.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, maybe it's going to be just like a Spanish version of it. But it's different. It's different. It is not that. It is not a remake of that movie. And it is kind of out of the box from what you expect from the director, who is
Pedro Almodovar.
Yes. So if you've seen any of his other movies and then you watch that, I would almost not, if you were going to go on a filmography journey of his, I would not start there. I would do a couple other movies and then just throw that in the middle just to say, and now for something completely different.
Yeah, his other stuff, a lot of it has come out through Criterion. And actually, this one I could have seen being a Criterion film. It is that
Same
level
here.
of artistry.
Yeah.
If I remember right, I think a lot of his films that were on Criterion are going out of print now. And I think Sony is looking to release them themselves in the US.
Oh, really? That's
so we may actually be
that.
getting a US version of this soon. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were jumping to 4K, because he has gotten very popular since they made that Criterion deal.
Oh, yeah. Big time. So they call it a science fiction psychological thriller. But how would you relate it to the horror genre, besides the obvious?
That is a good question. I feel like there is this trend in horror lately about identity horror. And this is one of those films that can really, really start to make you question things about what makes you as a person. In fact, literally right this moment, about 15 minutes ago, another interview went live on my channel that is about a film that is a full-on identity horror that I think would pair semi-well with this one. And it is an interesting idea lately where people are making movies about people changing who they are. And the fact that we have so many questions surrounding identity in politics and the social aspect of our lives and raising children and everything just adds to that immensely.
Yeah. And you mentioned Banderas. Him in this movie, he's like charming, but almost in a way where it's like he can be so deceptive because he's kind of like a prisoner of his own dysfunction and his own mind. And I don't know, this, what would you call it, technology that he comes up with, that he does the surgery with? We're trying to keep this spoiler free at the same time.
This one's really hard not to.
I know. but it's kind of like he becomes a prisoner of the potential of what he can do. And it's almost like when you talk to artists, especially like painters, whatever, and their work is never finished until somebody takes it from them, like a deadline or something.
Yep.
And you kind of get that feeling about it.
Yeah, this his acting in this it really harkened back to like Norman Bates, but not necessarily in the first film. Norman Bates as he advanced as a person, because Anthony Perkins really embraced Psycho and went with it. I mean, the fact that he directed one of those films himself really showed how much he cares, I think. But Norman Bates can be very charming and also very sinister. And Antonio Banderas really takes this up a notch because he is rich, he's powerful, he is talented, and that is a dangerous combination, especially when it comes to something like this, for sure.
Yeah, the whole motif of the film just reminded me, almost like, I'm a big Hitchcock fan. It reminded me of something that Hitchcock would have done in modern times with,
Yeah.
you know, the technology of plastic surgery and rhinoplasty and all that stuff now. Like, if he wanted to cover something like that or adopt a novel, like I think this is an adapted screenplay or whatever,
Yeah.
that I could see him saying, yeah, I want to do that. And I mean, he couldn't get like a James Stewart or Cary Grant or whatever. So Antonio Banderas is a good replacement.
He is, yeah. I think he fits this very well. Number 2 is probably the most Stone Cold classic on my list, one that everybody's seen, and one of the directors that I didn't love growing up, and in the last 5 or 6 years, I've really come to respect, especially his biggest titles, and that's got to be Cronenberg's version of The Fly. And this is the Scream Factory collection of all of the Fly films, and he built a movie that is so interesting because, like I said earlier, I love romantic comedies. I love stories that craft around a good love story, and I got to be honest, I think this might be one of the most authentic love stories captured in film ever. It is done in a way where Seth Brundle comes across as odd and maybe at least a little quirky, to say the least, but the fact that
we are talking about Jeff Goldblum here. Yeah, quirky is a good word to use.
He and Gina Davis, we see it budding, we see it fall in love in a way that is real and done in almost a real-time way, even though there's some time jumps in the middle, of course, but they authentically find this passion and shared love of the intellectual with each other, and that sort of thing isn't captured very well usually. And I think because we were not going for the comedic efforts here, it was done in a way that felt more authentic than in other iterations. But then we add in the horror of it all, and to watch this person that has so much going for him just absolutely lose it because he is trying to overcome this piece of technology. It is a terrifying look again into identity, and to watch Seth become the Brundlefly is one of the most appalling pieces of film ever. And really cool ideas that we get in this film, because it turns into a bit of a progressive film at the end. We start talking about abortion a little bit and everything that comes with that. And Gina Davis is incredible in this, and that's not to take away from Jeff Goldblum, but you have to be amazing to support a character like that and not get lost. And then to really dive into what I mentioned earlier, this is one of the best versions of practical effects you will ever see. It is horrifying to watch, somebody pull off their fingernails. It is horrible to watch this pussy, gross substance coming out of somebody's face. The arm wrestling scene is done in such a tense fashion that you know something's coming, but then when it happens, it just sticks harder because of how it was filmed. And Cronenberg, just a master in this movie.
Yeah, he has such control with body horror, especially his earlier movies. More modern stuff like Crime to the Future, I think it's more just gross to be gross, but things like the practical effects, the makeup effects
Yeah.
on this is just timeless, timeless. We keep talking about these movies, like I mentioned a thing earlier. They're not classics for no reason. I mean, they stand a test of time because you have a combination of great content, we have intensity that holds up, and then you have these effects that you know you'll never forget just because they're so good.
Absolutely. And because this is one of those movies that just starts and then it stays on this escalating path until the end credits, it builds this tension inside yourself that you don't notice. And there's many times, even after watching this film, 15 times over the years, that I notice about three-quarters of the way through, like, oh wow, my heart is beating really fast, and it has not stopped in a long time. I
Yeah,
love this movie.
it's that 8-year-old intensity again, not knowing what's going to happen next in here.
Exactly. Exactly.
How do you compare this? This is one of those movies where I feel the remake is better than the original. Since you have the whole set there, how do you compare it to the original one with Vincent Price? That's the only person I know that I could recall from that movie.
Well, and this one's difficult for me because in fact, within arm's distance here, I love Vincent Price so much. He is always watching over me. Uh, I appreciate the original. I think they're very different films. And
Hmm.
I think that it is the perfect example of technology and time allowing for a better version of a story to be told. The same with The Thing. There are, gosh, probably 5 or 6 remakes that I think outpace the originals by a long shot. And this is certainly one of them.
True. Very true. Third one.
Third one. This one is interesting, and I know that we were texting about this one a little bit. I grew up in the music scene. I was a volunteer with the radio station for multiple years. I've hosted bands playing in my living room. I've booked shows. I played a little bit of music, done all kinds of stuff, and I like movies that give me a sense of realism in a way that I can relate to, but then also not relate to, because my life has never been anything like this situation. um, my number 3 is the movie Green Room. I love the movie Green Room. This is a German media book of the release, and this art is like incredibly compelling and more murky than the art that we got in the US. First off, that is Patrick Stewart, and Patrick
Yeah.
Stewart plays this wild villain in this movie, and I his performance in this so much more than I expected. So basically, this is about a punk band that is traveling, and they are poor and needing to get from show to show. And they book this show just because they happen to have an acquaintance that knows somebody at this venue. They show up, and it turns out to be a Nazi den. Essentially, they are shouting white power and stuff like that. And so they play their show. They play the old Nazi punks F off song and walk off the stage. And they go back into the green room and they leave, and because they forgot something, they go back and they happen to witness something they were not supposed to. And so they are asked to stay until somebody gets there to take care of it. And the movie sort of takes off in this weird 70s exploitation way that I never expected it to go. This movie comes across kind of as a revenge flick in some points, but Patrick Stewart is unnerving. Anton Yelchin is amazing in this movie. We got Imogen Poots in this movie. We got Aaliyah Shawkat, who is in Arrested Development. She is fantastic in this. And it is one of the most realistic, terrifying, relatable films for me that I've ever seen. And it just takes the place of one night and is one of those movies where it's a siege film, basically. They're stuck somewhere and they got to escape, and you're along for the ride.
Yeah. This one surprised me. I was pleasantly surprised. because it almost starts off as something you could see being, like you said, just a one room type of situation, the green room, as it may be. But as it expands from there, it's like it pulls you in, and you mentioned it kind of changes genres and film styles as it goes along. So you really can't just like compartmentalize it into like one type of movie. But
Right.
it bears repeating. Sir Patrick Stewart, the man has done Hamlet. He's done Shakespeare on stage. He's freaking Picard, and now he's a leader of the skinhead group. It's when I talk about the casting that you weren't expecting, that takes the cake right there. And he was
Yeah.
believable, and he was awesome in it.
And he was like harsh. The fact that he is
Mm,
so cold in this movie, it fits the character well, but it's freaking Patrick Stewart, and you were so not ready for that.
yeah. And as far as relating it to the horror genre, once again, not a gore fest or anything like that, but it's more like the realistic horror. This is a
Yeah.
situation, if you try to place yourself in, you would see it as a horrific experience. And same thing like you were saying before, I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, and my heart rate is increasing. And I'm like, why? It's you definitely can't tell what's going to happen next
Right.
because it keeps you guessing. So that element alone is enough in a horror movie to just keep your heart rate at a high pace because the anticipation and the fear of not knowing what's next. It, those are the perfect elements for a horror movie.
Absolutely. And because of my past in music stuff, I've been in many green rooms. There's stuff like my parents didn't know I was attending some of these shows, and I've seen rooms that look just like what happens in this movie. Thankfully, none of them are Nazi dens, but the fact that I can look back and go, yeah, I could have like got mugged or stabbed or something on many of these nights, and I'm still here and happy and just relating to good stories from my youth. Yeah, this is one of those ones that hit really hard the first time I watched it.
Yeah. Wow. It's going to be one of those answers to give me a movie that you think I've never seen before, but I would absolutely love. I'll be like, let me tell you about Green Room.
Well, and the other thing, if people have never seen Green Room, or they have, and they haven't seen the director's previous film, the director put out a film called Blue Ruin, which is a straight up revenge flick. And he has this really interesting style. And after watching Green Room, if you watch Blue Ruin, it feels very similar, but it is so different and so well crafted that you can just tell it's a director that is destined for great things. And since then, he's directed a Netflix original film. He's done a couple other things like that. I think he's even done some TV. He's growing for sure. It's Jeremy Saulnier is his name.
Next one.
Next one. This is number 4, and this is another one that there's a few rooms in this movie that I can smell. I was really excited that you were going to be watching this for the first time, and I want to share with the world about The Wailing. The Wailing is a Korean folk horror film that is not a typical folk horror film. It is a very rooted in a lot of tradition and spiritualism found in Korea type of film that starts off as what appears to be like a police procedural almost, except it's a little off. And as the movie goes, there are these weird situations that you are thrust into where people are appearing almost like zombies. People are in a situation where they are almost attacked by a dog. And it's just this crazy long journey that you can go on with our main character as he's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And it is full of some iconic, beautiful imagery and captured in a way that we really don't get in Western cinema a lot of the time. And I'm astonished by how many people have still not seen this film. And it's another one, I really don't want to say too much about, because it is one of those that you should go in blind as much as possible.
And I'm really glad that I did, because wow, what an excellent movie that was. At times, I don't know, maybe because I have hot fuzz on my mind lately, but in the beginning, it almost seemed like the bumbling cop at times, and the
Yeah,
situations they were put into and doing investigations and all that. I was like, it's almost trying to make him incompetent. And then as it goes on, you realize, no, we're just setting you up for what's about to come. And when it comes, and it comes strong, you're like, whoa,
yeah,
whoa.
yeah.
And
There,
I don't know what it is about it, but like the supernatural element of it just like totally absorbs you, and the way they're trying to resolve things, just like it keeps you into the film almost that you don't even realize the runtime, because this is over 2.5 hours long, and I didn't
yep.
feel it. I'm quick to feel once we hit that 2 hour mark. I'm like, so is this going to finish soon? Can we get a resolve to
Yep.
this? And I didn't have that feeling at all until the end, when I realized, okay, this is truly the end. And then the credits rolled. It wasn't like some long, conclusion, no kind of denouement or whatever. It was just like credits.
Yep.
I was like, this is beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, the first time I saw this, it was a little bit overlong, I thought, and then once I understood some of the imagery that they explain, like there's some stuff that deals with colors near the end of this film. This movie does really well on rewatch, and a lot of the movies like this, they don't do well on rewatch. But this
Right.
one, watching it the second time, it felt shorter somehow. It felt more realistic. It felt more rooted in a sense of dread. And I actually appreciated this more on rewatch, which I was honestly super surprised about.
What else would you say about this to entice people to watch? Because I'll just say watch it, but what else would you add to that?
One of the things, I have always been fascinated with how filmmakers in Asia, pretty much all over Asia, are able to capture this very foreign feeling sort of setting. And The Wailing has quite a few different ways that we explore that. The biggest thing, the opening for me was one of the best examples, because it's pouring rain. It's this kind of haphazard structure that we're seeing, and not giving a spoiler here or anything like that. We see a dead body, and there are police investigating, and just immediately the setting alone, it feels very singular. It feels something for this film that is almost a character into itself. And as we discover some of the other scenes, it becomes more of a character in itself. There's like running through alleys. There is structures in the middle of the forest that we go visit, and it gives this new life of like what is happening around us that we don't know about at all.
Yeah, there's something about South Korean horror movies that I don't know if it's just different from our Western society point of view, but I'm thinking of things like, my favorite is Train to Busan, or The Thirst, or The Host is another one. And just thinking about those movies, and there's something attractive about it,
Yeah.
and almost mysterious, because like in the case of a folk horror, you don't understand the culture and everything that goes along with it. Like, we don't exactly have shamans walking around in the US, unless you mean American shaman, and you need some CBD products or something. But
Not
there's
quite the
something
same.
no, they don't deal with the things that they deal with in Korea. But there's something about that change in culture, and even like the family aesthetic sometimes, because
Yes.
that also tends to play a major role in a lot of the
Oh
movies,
yes.
where you wouldn't normally see that unless it was like, something's attacking my house or my family.
Right.
But there's always that strong element of family in their movies.
Absolutely, and this gets explored deeply in this film. The wailing is centered around family. So yeah, if people are wanting a heart-wrenching film like that, where you are going to be fully invested in a few of the characters, this is one to grab onto.
Yeah. And number five.
Number five. So this is what I have called for a long time the film that has absolutely terrified me the most. I grew up in a very small town in the middle of the desert, and some of the houses that I first lived in after I left my parents' house were not incredibly isolated, not like a cabin in the middle of the woods or anything like that, but set apart and off on their own in a way that was a little bit uneasy, especially at night. And this movie really exploited that feeling in me, and it came out when I was 21, the perfect time to scare me to death, and that is The Strangers. And this movie, this movie is so terrifying because of the ending to me. The fact that all of this happens just because somebody was home. And for those that don't know, obviously this is a very popular movie now, but there is a couple that is going through some strife in their relationship, and as they are going through this, somebody knocks on the door and asks if somebody is home. That is not a person that is there, and suddenly her and two others are terrorizing this couple, and it turns into a night of like a dog chasing a rabbit, basically. And it is isolation. It is terrifying. It is helplessness to the nth degree. It is a time when there was a little less technology. There was not great cell phone service in the middle of nowhere. And because of that, we are left with nothing, essentially. We have two main characters and a sense of dread, and you get that for the next 90 minutes, and you are completely taken away with them, because it's a very, very relatable story and a very relatable fear, which does not exist in a lot of these modern films.
When you told me about this, that was going to be one of your picks. Please tell everyone what I immediately said back to you.
I believe the exact words were "oh no," or something like that.
It was a little harsher than that. It began with the letter F, but
Yeah. This is a movie that seems to get that reaction out of most people.
well, to me, I could watch hours and hours of slasher films and no reaction. Maybe in the moment, jump scare, whatever. I hate jump scares, by the way. But once you get over that moment, it's like, okay, move on. But the thing that truly horrifies me, like you, I imagine, are home invasion movies. Anything. It could be Panic Room. It could be this. But this absolutely terrifies me because there's no rhyme or reason to it. Once again, you don't know what's coming next, and you're just sitting in it. You're sitting in that fear. You're sitting in that anticipation of the worst. And it's almost like the couple goes through all of this to kind of see what's truly important. It's like you mentioned, they're going through some strife, but does that matter when there are some strangers trying to kill you? Probably not.
At all.
So and I've seen, because I'm, a glutton for punishment, I've seen this several times, and every time I watch it, it's like I know what's coming next, but it's still there. And because it's real. Realism is the worst horror. Just like the movie Carrie, everybody says, "Oh, Carrie's scary, this or whatever." The horror in that movie is the mother.
Yep.
She's the true horror in the movie. And in this one, it's just that unknown. It's night. It's someone breaking in, invading your space, your territory, your life, and having to deal with that. And it's very immersive. It puts you into that scenario. What would I do? What would I do if it was
Absolutely
me and my wife, or me and my family, or me alone? And just kind of forces you to deal with that. If they broke the fourth wall at the end of the movie, I wouldn't be here. I would have had a heart attack. First watch, and it would have been over.
There is a scene in this film, and I'm glad that you brought up that you don't like jump scares, because it is the perfect reason to highlight this one specific scene. Is that uh, I don't think they have names. I think some fans have named the characters, but like the male of these three individuals, he is out of the frame, and you are seeing Liv Tyler in the main scene here, and then out of nowhere, the main character appears in the background of this room. There's no loud music. There's no theremin. There's no sharp violin sting. There's no juddery zoom in with the camera. It is just a very casual, holy crap, he's in the background. And before she can turn around, of course, he just silently takes a couple steps back and he's not visible anymore. And just the way that that can unnerve you silently shows how successful this movie can be, I think.
What did you think of the sequel?
I liked it. I did not go in expecting the same sort of film, and I think a lot of people that did were let down. My biggest thing, I'm one of those people. I love Christina Hendricks, so the fact that she was only in it for like 11 minutes was really disappointing. Obviously, everybody immediately goes to the swimming pool scene, and I understand why. It's stylish. It's really well done. It is effective. It is the scariest part of the film. But the whole thing, I think, is pretty well done. I like that it had this new setting, and we weren't stuck in just a couple rooms, and it was still this unnerving way to have people stuck in a small location, this little trailer park, and it was still effective. And now they've announced this rebooted trilogy possibly coming.
Yep.
So
I'm
curious what they're going to do with that.
There's more coming. Oh my God.
More coming.
Oh man. Well, thank you for sharing those. With our time remaining, let's just go through a couple other questions quickly.
Sure thing.
Name a classic horror movie that everybody loves, but you can't stand.
I hate Rosemary's Baby. I don't know why. I don't think it is scary. I think that the acting is good for one. Well, I'll say two characters. The neighbor also is pretty dang good because she's weird. I don't think it's even directed particularly well, which I'm glad to say now, knowing who the director is. But I've never really understood all of the praise that is heaped on that film. I feel like it is. I don't know. I think we only dive deep into one character, and because of that, it doesn't really give me the tension that I really want to have with others in that movie. And yeah, I don't think it particularly holds up very well. It was probably amazing when it first came out, but yeah, just not my bag.
Yeah. Name a classically hated horror movie that you love.
This is probably going to be a cop-out because a lot of people love the first one now, but I am a diehard defender of nearly all of the Saw films. I saw most of them on opening night in the theater with my now wife, long before we were married. And I'll be honest and say I did not love Spiral. I thought it was good, not great. But I think that Saw has some storylines that are broken when you watch all of them, but the fact that they were able to craft some storylines that are connected in such a really complex way and make them still unique in perspective and keep a singular style across multiple directors, I think is something to be applauded for sure.
Yeah, and I think that is credited to James Wan because he's been involved in the entire franchise in some way. And it could be part, even though he's not always the writer or the director, it's keeping that feel of it going a long way. And Tobin Bell is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And finally, number 5, who would you like to see me have a conversation with on this channel?
A long dear friend of mine, and that is Aaron Pinn. Most people that have been watching BlueTubers for quite some time know who he is. He has a deep, rich history in horror. He has been involved in many of these films for years because he saw a lot of them on opening night in the theater. Aaron and I go back for years and have been friends, gosh, since long before the pandemic even. So he is somebody that I think you would find a rich kinship in for sure.
Yeah, I watch his live streams on occasion, so I am familiar with him, but I've
Good.
never had the opportunity to have a conversation with him. So that's a good suggestion. I
Yeah,
will
he's a
try
good
to
dude.
reach out, especially after this month. I'm looking forward to all these horror conversations that I'm going to have this month. So I thank you for helping me do a little preview of it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun at this movie marathon. My wife is a little jealous. She wants to come along, but
Mine too.
yeah. I want to thank Ryan for joining me today on the conversation. Please tell the people where they can find you.
Everywhere. I am one of the accounts that post announcements for all of the Blu-rays and 4Ks and even new DVDs getting announced. So if you are interested in that, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all under The Disconnected. And I am seemingly everywhere and online all the time. So I'm open to emails, messages. I pretty much answer every single comment. So I am here if you have any questions or just want to chat film.
Cool. And we'll put all his information at the bottom. Thanks again, man.
Thanks for that. Always. I appreciate this. This was a blast.